I'm Adam Conway from Ireland. I work with XDA developers. I studied computer science, but went straight into writing, which is a bit odd for a computer scientist, but I just liked writing a lot. I could get creative with it, and there are kind of a lot of interesting ways that I could take a computer science degree and apply it to writing. So this is going to be more of an entry-level talk. It's talking about how I overcame the barriers of I guess getting involved with the ESP32 because I'd heard of it a long time ago. And I tried to play around with it, I struggled. And this is kind of figuring out, or explaining how I overcame that barrier and then started building arguably too many things. So it all started with a light bulb. I had a 2-year light bulb that I'd heard had an ESP32 in it. I thought oh, you can reflash it, whatever. So I created an ESP home config, and that's where I stopped. I got stuck here. I had no clue what I was doing. I just kind of left it there because I didn't know that I had to solder stuff to reflash it. It was a whole thing. And I didn't really come back to it for another year or so because a colleague of mine, his name is Ayush Pandey at XDA, started doing it as well. And I'll be talking about my interactions with him over that in a bit. But basically, as an overview for the ESP32 and what it actually is, it's just an inexpensive microcontroller. You can do a lot with it. It's Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. There's other versions as well, like with the H2, H4, and the C6. So you can do Zigbee, Thread. Basically, whatever you want with it. And that's the beauty of it. That's what I like so much about it. And unfortunately, it's very confusing if you don't know where to start. So for me, I was lost. I had no clue. So I messaged my colleague, and I said to him, I don't know what to do. Tell me what to buy. I'll buy it, and I'll do it. So he told me, he sent me an Amazon link, and he said, here's a pair of ESP32s with a dev board, and here's a box with 70 sensors. I was like, cool. Bought those, and then I had too many sensors. So I was trying to figure out what to do with it, and I was building it out. I was just putting together random stuff, essentially. I had no clue what I was doing, but it was all about learning and figuring it out, because then once I knew if I was familiar with it, I could actually do something interesting with it. So I had my temperature sensor, I had a soil sensor, and then I also built an audio level sensor. And at the time, that was the most advanced that I did, because it was capable of telling me the decibel level of audio in the room. And it was after these projects, it started to click a bit for me. I was oh, there's cool stuff I can do with this. So I was just throwing together random stuff. You can see the absolute mess that thing is. So there's the potentiometer, there's an LED, and then there's the LCD at the bottom. And I also added a button as well, where I could just cycle through different displays on it. So I would pull data from Home Assistant and kind of just see what I could do. It was starting off really, really small and just allowing ideas to come naturally to me as opposed to trying to force myself. Because when I tried to force myself, when I went in wanting to do the thing with the 2-year light bulb, I was so lost. But when I just had a million sensors in front of me in the ESP32, it was okay, I can see easy ways to start doing this, so I'll just start with those. And the beauty of it is, the programming doesn't have to be that hard part. For a lot of ESP Home, it's copy and paste basic YAML configurations. So you can build a temperature sensor that you only have to write 5 lines of code, and it's fine. But it then gets a bit more complicated when you're dealing with lambdas. So you're writing your own C++ code then, and that's when having that programming experience previously did help me. But aside from that, there's a lot of different examples out there and things you can learn from people all over the world sharing what they're doing and how they do it. And there have been many people who have been very helpful to me along this journey. So people who I've spoken to, and then people who have just seen their code or what they talk, what they documented publicly, all of those really, really helped me. So when I started and I built some stuff and I liked what I could do with it, I started looking into more specific, I guess, devices. So in this case, this was the Zhao e-paper panel, and I got 2 of those because I was I want to build something that's useful and looks nice on my desk. So I bought that, and I was able to then build my own like productivity assistant. So what I've got is I've got the weather just on the left with the time, like the weather for the next few hours. I've got what work I have to do for the day because it's pulling from a custom integration with Asana. And then I've got what time my next call is because there were a good few times where if I was working and I was say too locked in on what I was working on, I've missed some work meetings, which is not great. So if I keep this on my desk, I can see always what I have to do for the day, and it keeps me on track. And that's just like one example of it. I've seen people turn these into like live schedules for the bus and stuff. So there's a lot of ways you can use these. This is the way it worked for me. I started building more things. I was sharing all of it on XDA, which helped me learn as well because I kind of create a project for myself, and often I made the project too difficult for myself. So it meant that I either have to tell my boss, oh, actually, I can't do this, which I didn't want to do, or I have to throw myself in the deep end and figure it out. So that's what I did for most of these projects. These are some of my most advanced projects that I've done. So I built a ReSpeaker-like voice assistant where my dad had given me a old CD wallet speaker, and it's crazy old. Like I think it was like the early 2000s, maybe even the late 90s. And you can see this PCB here. It was water damaged, but the speakers were okay. So I took the speakers out and wired them up to the ReSpeaker, and they still work. So they actually sound really good for like how old they are. So that's the prototype one, but I've now since soldered it, and that enabled me to use my older tech that would have otherwise been thrown out and turn it into something. And it was this natural iteration over time of the things I was building that I started to see more and more possibilities. So I did the same with the ReSpeaker XVF 3800. It's just it's a very similar product, but it has 4 microphones, noise cancellation, all that kind of stuff. And then the Electro Pro Panel Advanced, where I built a visual voice assistant. I ported the ESP S3 Box 3, I think that's the name. I ported that software to the Pro Panel, and I converted it to LVGL for the graphics instead. And it's a fully like Google Nest Hub replacement kind of thing that allows me to visualize stuff from my smart home while I actually use my voice to control my home as well. So the thing with the ESP32 is you don't need to be like an expert. You don't need to fully know what you're doing. Even when you get started with it, you like me, you can just buy it and then stare at it and hope you figure it out. I just had it on my desk. I was like learning slowly and surely, and it was very, very like flexible and forgiving, because if you flash something and it doesn't work, you can't just flash it again. You haven't like broken it. So it allowed me to just build random stuff. There are so many projects I've built where I then just tore it down because like I don't need it anymore, or I just built it for fun. And even this one here is the Flipper Zero has a thing called bad USB, where you can simulate USB inputs on a PC or whatever, or a mouse, any kind of input. And what I did was, it allows me to, I re-implemented DuckyScript, which allows you to write like commands for sending in inputs to a PC. And with the ESP32, I can automate my PC by just plugging it in and controlling it from the web. And this kind of thing is like a few months ago, or maybe I guess a year ago, I wouldn't have even thought this was possible. But because I iterated over time and just did small things and got slowly bigger and bigger, it gave me more ideas. And that's been my entire process through this, is just more ideas, just building on what I did before, what I learned. So when I built like other projects and I'd heard that the ESP32 S3 has the human input device emulation, that's when it hit me of like, oh, I could emulate a keyboard and do something weird. So when you're getting started as well, it doesn't need to be like difficult or anything like that. You can just, there's no rules. You don't need to follow a playbook. You don't need to do it a specific way. Anybody, like, some programmers can be very like, you have to do it a certain way, you have to learn a certain way. That's not true. Whatever works for you, whatever teaches you, that's all that matters. So here, like, I remember as a kid, I would copy people's projects. So I'd be like 12, 13, I'd find somebody's project and just modify it a little bit. And if it broke, then it was like, okay, how do I fix it? So I then kind of grew over time, learning from projects, and it's been very similar now. Like when I ported the the S3 Box 3 Softworks, that Electro panel, it was because I was able to kind of copy that code, move it over, fix what didn't work, and then re-implement the stuff I wanted to do, like when I switched the graphics. And even AI can help you learn with it, because funnily enough, it's actually often not right when it comes to the ESP32 and ESP Home and all that. So you learn by fixing, because when you get that code from any like DeepSeek or ChatGPT or anything like that, it's probably not going to work. So you can then figure out why it doesn't work, and then you'll actually learn through that way. So these are like the tools I use that make it easier. I mean, there's obviously ESP Home and Home Assistant, which I've talked the bulk of for this. Then there's like Lavian Graphics and LVGL. Lavian Graphics is like a lower level way to interface with the hardware, and then LVGL is like the higher level graphics library. And it allows you just to make like really nice UIs that look good and are responsive, and they're mostly predefined widgets that you kind of just deploy that have already been made, so it can be very easy to make something that looks good and consistent. And then the ESP IDF like SDK, and then Platform IO. Platform IO is very, very good, but that's a lot more advanced. It's where now like a lot of the more advanced projects would use that instead, just because like gives you more control. Like ESP Home is fantastic, and you can do very advanced projects in it, but then sometimes you just want that little bit of extra like lower level control, which is what that enables. And then finally there's online communities, which there are dozens of, and they've all made it so possible for me to actually build things and grow and learn. Like even the ESP Home Discord is like, I've sent in messages being like, I have no clue what I'm doing. This is difficult, this one project I have, somebody please. And then somebody will actually help. Or I was reverse engineering, or not reverse engineering, sorry, I was creating the first like config for an Electro rotary display. And again, that was the ESP Home guys. I sent in like my data that like I had from the data sheet and like something I took from the sample code, and I was like, how do I implement this in ESP Home? And a guy helped me, and it wasn't the right answer, but it got me on the right track. So really, like when it comes to building these projects, your next project is just an idea away, and it could end up being one of the most useful things that you have. Like that e-paper display that I have, it's still the most useful thing I have built, and that was one of the first things I built. Whatever you want to do, like the hardware is there, you can build whatever you want, and honestly, the ESP32 can probably do it. Like TinyML, for example, is something I've been playing around with recently, and I'm only getting to grips with it now, but like having that on-device machine learning is something that, like, if this device can do that, it can do practically anything, like once you kind of allow yourself to just think. And even this one here, this project, that's one that it's using Comfy UI on my local server, and I built my own Home Assistant integration so that it would generate images and then display them on, that's the reterminal E1002. And it just cycles them every hour with different like images that are, the prompt is created from my Home Assistant data. And I could not have done that without an ESP32 powered display. I mean, I could have done it in general, the other stuff with like the Home Assistant integration. But having something that looks nice that I can keep on a mantelpiece or just on my table, and it has new graphics every hour, and I can tailor it to what's happening in my smart home, that's something I couldn't have done. This is one of my more recent projects, and it's a good example of why you don't need to be limited by your own hardware as well, or what you have available to you. So I don't have a 3D printer, which I really need one. I've been kind of putting it off for a long time. But I got this terminal DIY display, and it's just a panel with a driver board and a battery. And I didn't really know what to do with it because I don't have a 3D printer. How do I put this somewhere? What do I do with it? And I was looking around my home and I saw that I had a photo frame. And I thought, what if I just put that panel inside the photo frame and see how it looks? And I quite like it. It looks nice. And I didn't need a 3D printer. I didn't need anything like that. It was just using what I had and kind of taking the picture that was in it and then putting that back in there. And it reminded me why I love a lot of technology, and especially like a lot of older technology where there was a lot more optimizations and stuff going on. Nowadays, a lot of software can be kind of bloated in that. It brings me back to the basics of just like not very powerful hardware, and then also utilizing what you have available to you. So it's not just the hardware resources in terms of RAM and CPU and all that, but it's like stuff like this, where what do I have available to me because I don't have a 3D printer? And that worked perfectly. So if there's any questions, let me know. I'm just Adam Conway IE on literally everything. And then that's my email address as well if anybody wants to reach out.